I'm a senior associate at the Carnegie Middle East Center in Beirut, Lebanon. I mainly focus there on Syrian conflict, also on the role of Arab armies in politics and economics, and on police reform and various other issues. Tonight I'm speaking about, or I'm comparing the Palestinian and Syrian revolutionary experiences by looking at three main aspects. Leadership, the nature of leadership, how it's formed, created, acquired, whether from the top down or bottom up. And in this particular instance, I think there's a great deal of contrast between the Palestinian case, where the leadership that took over the Palestine Liberation Organization in the late 1960s and acquired legitimacy and authenticity, did so by working on the ground and taking over an existing structure. Whereas in the Syrian case, there was pretty much no opposition structure, and the people who've taken over are somewhat aging intellectuals who are fine people, but have been wholly lacking in political skill and competence to take on a brutal regime such as that of Bashar al-Assad. So there's one big contrast there. There's the second factor, which is organization. The existence of structures or networks, skills, the ability to learn lessons and evolve over time. Again, the Palestinians had a lot of time in which to go through the process of acquiring organizational structures and skills. They tested most of these through unions, student unions, trade unions, etc., before finally turning to overt political and military action. In the Syrian case, events unfolded so quickly that everyone was thrown into fighting the regime, whether with guns or without, but without that accumulation of experience and of structures and networks. And then finally, third is the issue of expectations. Usually revolutions start either over a very long period of time in which there are many attempts and failures and defeats, people are sent to prison or exiled, and finally a moment comes when, for some reason, large numbers of people start to respond and get involved. So it's a matter of contrasting the expectations of Palestinians at various very specific moments in their history that persuaded large numbers of them to join up in the new movement, and what persuaded large numbers of Syrians who'd been under the same regime for over 40 years and had learned to play along. Why now did they all turn to something new? I'm using the comparison to gain insight to what explains the success or the failure of the current Syrian opposition that's confronting the regime of Bashar al-Assad. I've chosen to compare with the Palestinian case because of the use of armed struggle as a central defining feature and the kind of revolutionary rhetoric coupled with the fact that the Syrian opposition was almost immediately recognized by much of the outside world, including the Western powers, which are usually very conservative, if not reactionary on these issues. They unusually recognized the Syrian opposition immediately. And that is something the Palestinians took 20 or 30 years to acquire. And I think the fact that the international dimension of recognition was so important in the Syrian case is also what makes it comparable to the Palestinian case. My sense is that for various historic reasons and perfectly understandable reasons, the Syrian opposition and the Syrian armed rebellion, which are two rather distinct things, have failed to deliver the kind of leadership and organizational effectiveness and learning process that is needed to defeat a regime of this efficiency and brutality. And so I think the moment has passed when these particular oppositional structures could win, which is not to say the revolution is over, but I think it will have to reappear in a different kind of guise. And it may reappear in something that looks more like a reformist movement rather than a complete challenge to the existing order.